Okay, I'd like to call the work session to order. The first item on the work session agenda is fiscal year 2017-18 audit report. Pete Catalfano, Catalfano and Associate.
Good afternoon, I'm Pete Catalfano. I believe each board member has a handout. Go through the handout first and the audit report. The top page of the handout, last August, we did an attestation engagement on the examination of the employee census data and underlying payroll records for the year ended December 31, 2017. This is the report on that engagement, and it's an unmodified opinion. It's the best opinion that the board could receive. Page 2 is our letter of observations and suggestions, and we note in this letter that the board implemented GASB statement number 75 last year, and that during the course of our audit, the board's employees were very polite and helpful to us. Pages 3 and 4, we proposed adjustments to management to correct some misstatements in their accounting records. Pages 3 and 4 are the corrections that we proposed. Management reviewed them. All proposed corrections were posted by management. Entry number 8 on page 4 is a significant journal entry, and this is due to GASB 78 or GASB 68 and GASB 75. Pages 5 through 10 is management's representation letter. At the end of the audit, management provides us with written representations. This is just a copy of the representations that management provided to us. I note in here that with the non-audit services we did, management was required to review those services, evaluate them, and accept them. And management, in this document, they note that they did perform those management functions. Pages 11 and 12 are for the Board of Education only. In this report, we note any qualitative aspects of accounting practices, any significant difficulties we encountered during the audit. We note that there were no significant difficulties in dealing with management in performing and completing our audit. Any corrected or uncorrected misstatements in all the proposed, all the misstatements that we identified, management corrected. There were no uncorrected misstatements. We note that there were no disagreements with management during the audit. On page 12, we note that management provided the representations that we just discussed. Management consultations with other independent accountants, we noted that we weren't aware of any. Any other audit findings or issues, we noted that there is a finding in your audit report dealing with late deposits at the individual school level, and any other matters or in the audit. The audit itself, the audit document, you want to start on pages 9 through 11. This is the independent audit report. This is our report on the financial statements, and for the year ended June 30, 2018, it's an unmodified opinion on the financial statements, which is the best opinion that the board could receive. On page 86, we tested some cash receipt transactions at the individual schools, and we noted that some of the receipts were late deposits. The deposits were made timely, and this is a repeat finding from the previous year. on page 87. We noted in our compliance audit that there were no findings for federal awards. And on page 88, in the compliance fund audit for state programs, we noted that there were no matters to report for state awards. On page 25, this is the balance sheet for governmental funds, which indicates your assets, liabilities, and fund balance as of June 30, 2018. The first column for general, that's your current expense fund. And the second to the last line item on that, in that column, is your total fund balance for the current expense fund. And last year it was, the ending balance was $1,012,155. And of that amount, you've appropriated for the current fiscal year, $572,018. On page 26, this is your income statement for your governmental funds. The first column, the general fund, that's your current expense fund. And the item to note on this page is the third to the last line item in that column. Shows your net change in fund balance. It's basically your profit or loss for the year. And for the year ended June 30, 2018, your current expense fund, the expenditures and transfers exceeded your revenues by $687,939. So for June 30, 2018 fiscal year, that's the amount of fund balance that you used for that fiscal year.
Excuse me.
Sure.
Are you saying on that particular fund balance, the remainder is $1,012,155, or is that?
That's correct. That's your fund balance, your total fund balance for the current expense fund at June 30, 2018.
And we're projected on page 25, I'm sorry to back up, to spend $572,000 of that in the upcoming year?
That's correct. That's what.
Reducing that $424,000, is that what I'm saying here? Roughly?
Yeah, in your current year's budget, you've projected to spend of that $1,012,572,000, which is going to leave you. You've got to add that $15,792.
Right.
But that's restricted. You can't use, basically the only fund balance you could use is the $424,345.
That's what I was trying to understand.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
So, with that in mind, if you use the full $572,000 at June, for the year ending June 30, 2019, and your revenues exceed your or the same as your revenues, your revenues are the same as your expenditures, you'll have $424,000 to spend in subsequent years after June 30, 2019.
I understand.
So I did look at June 2017 year and June 30, 2018 year. In June 30, 2018, like we discussed, I'll just round this off. Your excess expenditures over revenues were $687,000, and in June 30, 2017, it was the excess revenue or expenditures over revenues were $753,000. So you spent about you used about $1.4 million of your fund balance in the 2 years ended June 30, 2018, and you don't even have that much fund balance anymore at June 30, 2018. So if those trends continue, you're gonna run out of fund balance.
What was it 2 years you were referencing, did you say 2013?
No, June 30, 2017, the last 2 years.
Okay, the last 2 years, okay.
Yeah, last 2 years, yeah.
And we spent between those 2 years, roughly 1.2?
What, you used about 1.4 million of your fund balance in those 2 years.
Mhm.
And you don't have 1.4 million at the end of June 30, 2018.
Laura, do you know how long it's been since we've been in this shape? Like, has it been, say, 15 years where our fund balance has been this low, or has it ever been this low?
I don't think it's been this low in a long time.
Yeah, I was wondering how long, if you, will you check on that for me and see how long it's been?
I know it was never that low back when I was superintendent.
Right, I
It's
think
gonna be
this is
with
a,
probably 20 years
The lowest
or
it's
more.
ever been.
yeah,
Yeah, or more.
Based on all the stuff I've reviewed, based on my memory.
I don't remember that.
Do we have, you probably don't. Anyhow, we'll have a discussion at some point as to what we think is causing this, and I think we've already done that.
Yeah,
so-
we already know that.
Thank you.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions?
Any questions for Pete?
Oh, yes, sir, I did have one on page 87.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry. So on page 87, am I understanding this correctly? That's because we have certain schools or maybe isolated or a distance from the bank at the time, then they might need to make a deposit, they're not able to do so, so some of the cash isn't getting deposited the way that our policy is laid out. Is that what's causing this?
I don't think that was the case.
Okay.
In that year. Now, we do look at, we know that there's gonna be night deposits made. In a lot of cases, there's night deposit at various schools, but we look at the bank stamps, and usually those are stamped like at 8 o'clock or 8:45 in the morning, so we know that that's when the bank opens, makes their night deposits. In this case, one of the findings, we selected a transaction to test, and when we pulled the teacher book, it was actually cash in that teacher receivable.
Okay.
Okay.
Is this what I'm understanding is that somewhere in here it says the policy is to, the board's policy is to require deposits when money's on hand to 250, and regardless of the amount or regardless of the amount on hand, all funds must be deposited by the last business day of each month. So is there something here where I'm looking at it that it might be that because of the policy we have in place is a
You
little
have,
bit more difficult? Or?
the board's had that policy for a long time. For a long time, the policy was $100.
Okay.
But I believe, if memory, your policy basically mirrors the state policy. And I think the state policy was $250, and somewhere along the line, the board raised.
It's general statute.
Right. So,
I see.
yeah, state law. So,
Okay.
the board's policy of $250 mirrors the state law.
Okay, so then this verbiage about, and the board wanted to increase it because of the state, we wouldn't be able to do that anyhow, is that correct?
Correct.
So that's a moot point. All right.
Yeah, 250 is the max you can use.
Got it. So we really, aside from trying to hone that in and be a little bit more, timely.
Yeah, I think management goes out to the schools and identify, as part of our testing, we have to make inquiries, and management says, what did you find? And management informed us that they found late deposits at some of the schools.
All right. Yes, sir.
Okay, any other questions?
This is a finding every year, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Now,
I'm sure,
was it last year that it just came that there was considered a significant deficiency?
Yeah, it's a significant deficiency, and it's non-compliance.
But before that, it wasn't considered a significant deficiency, is that correct?
My viewpoint is, well, the definition of significant deficiency is something that, is less than a material weakness, but it's something to bring to the attention of the governing board. So, in that respect, probably needs a definition of significant deficiency that you need to bring to their attention. But at the same time, one could argue it's not a significant deficiency because management is out there and they find this year in, year out when they go out and audit some of the books. I think I could note that, let's see. If you look at page 90, This is summary schedule of prior audit findings that management has to provide to the auditor. And if you look at, the first, these are pretty much redundant, but if you just look at finding 2013-01, in that second, sentence, it mentions that finance department personnel visited the individual schools during the year ending June 30, 2018, and found, instances where deposits weren't being.
Is it all of our schools or just a couple?
I think our testing found one school,
One school?
but management reported multiple schools to us.
It's
Okay.
most schools.
Most of them?
Is it reoccurring at the same schools year after year? Do we know?
I don't have it. I mean, probably Susan would probably be the one to ask that question, because she's the one that goes out, as far as I know, and audits those records. She would have a better, understanding here.
I'm wondering, you know, I know sometimes teachers are collecting money for field trips or what have you, and maybe a parent comes in after school and pays the students' funds, and then the office is gone. I mean, I'm really wondering if things like that might be the reason that it's not, the teacher goes on and receipts it.
It's every reason you could think of. We have backup plans, they have backup plans. We realized that was happening some, so we developed backup plans so that if somebody comes in after hours, there's a plan to get the money to the bank if it's $250 or more.
$250.
No, $250.
So it shouldn't be a problem with the field trip, that shouldn't be it, you know, a teacher taking money from one, because it's not $250.
Sometimes teachers forget to take the money to the office. Sometimes the bookkeeper's out and the school didn't have their backup plan, didn't motivate their, or activate their backup plan. It's
Okay.
every reason you could think of. You were a teacher, so stuff happens.
Yeah, I know people come in after hours and give teachers money, but that's not $250, so, and that shouldn't happen. I also wanted to ask, did you have a chance to look at the Evergreen report?
No, if I did, it was just a very cursory, and I don't really remember, really looking at it. If I did, like I say, it was cursory.
Okay.
Was there something in there that I should?
Well, no, I just, you know, I just wanted to know if you'd had a chance to read it and what your thoughts were, but that's okay. Thank you.
Would you like Lori and I to meet with him and go over the Evergreen report and see what their findings are and see what his thoughts are?
I think that would be a good idea, since you do a
You
yearly
won't charge
audit.
us too much, will you?
I'm on the spot.
Well, we got 420.
That's right. We'll buy you lunch, okay? We'll buy you lunch.
Well, I got Christmas
Nap
presents to
cafeteria.
Hold on a second.
But, yeah, I'll be glad to just let me know.
Let me ask you something though, does, in that $250 accounting, is that strictly cash or is that checks as well?
Cash or checks, but I think most people pay by cash.
Okay.
But it's both.
So if somebody get a check, it's not like they would be really able to see what this policy is trying to prevent, which is the money going into the wrong area, one way or another. It's kind of difficult with check, but okay.
Well, I know some schools are trying to do it because I have sent money with my daughter and she's brought it back home because the teacher said she wasn't taking it, the money had already been turned in, bring it back the next day. So some are following the rules.
Yeah, we have noticed that there's been some of the schools, the records
They're
are
trying.
immaculate. They do.
I know they
The bookkeeper
are.
does a very good job, so. Any other
Nice
questions?
hands.
But the 250 is state mandated, it's not, yeah.
Yeah, because I think the board policy at one time was 100, and the board, I'm assuming the board raised it to 250 to mirror the state policy. But yeah, you can go under 250, but you can't go
But-
higher than 250.
And the state policy's been that amount for at least 30 years.
Okay.
So $250 used to buy a lot more than
Yeah,
it does now.
Yeah.
Yeah, the policy doesn't recognize inflation. Any other questions?
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Okay, next item. First reading of 2018 fall policy updates. And there's a bunch of. How does the board wish to handle this? Just if you have any questions on specific policies, do that.
A bunch of them.
The general summary statement is that, once again, twice a year, the School Board Association goes through our policies, and if there are any changes in state law, they make sure that the policies get updated to reflect the state law. The majority of these, that's exactly what they did, but there are some things that were common among several of the policies. One, from the very first one, the school safety, it says that starting with the next school year, we're mandated to have an anonymous safety tip line. We have that, we don't call it that, and so what's gonna happen is, we're gonna change the title of ours on the line, but it's still gonna say an anonymous safety tip line. But when you read the policy and you read what's on our website, what the purpose of our tip line is, it's exactly what it says in the policy. So we're just gonna go through it as just a bookkeeping, type of thing. We're just gonna change the name of it on our website, and then we'll be in full compliance with this policy.
So we're already doing staff training on how to respond to, receive adequate training on the operation of the school's anonymous safety tip line. We're already doing that.
Well, we have, the people that operate it know how to operate it, and we've got
Okay.
administrators directing the investigative process after information comes in.
And we're informing the students that it's there and that it's there for their, ability. And I had one question, about who monitors the fact that the principal of each school needs to register with the North Carolina Sex Offender and Public Protection Registry to receive email notifications?
Nobody yet. We'll have to, and make sure all of our principals, especially since we have several new ones, we have to make sure that everybody gets those notifications.
Somebody did send
Yeah,
an
they
email.
called us and we got it.
So somebody must have enrolled you, or you did it yourself?
They contacted us and told us to
Okay.
enroll. I
Okay.
don't remember who.
So, good, they're doing it, but we have no one that's monitoring that they're doing it.
We don't have anybody right now, to my knowledge, that knows who's registered and who's not, to get those, notices.
I think y'all would be notified.
Well,
If you
we-
signed up individually, you'll receive a notice.
Yeah, they will, but what my question is who makes sure that all of our
That they're-
principals are doing that? And so you three have said y'all
Somebody
four.
called me, I don't remember who, it might have been your vet, I'm not sure.
What about
I know we
the
tried
other
to get everybody on.
principals?
Yeah, we
No?
just have to, we have to make sure that it new principals.
Yeah, we need to make sure, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, some of the
As an
questions and
informational
comments.
note, I've received, as a superintendent, I
Okay.
receive updates when somebody gets added to that list.
But in our policy, it
Right, it
says,
says the principals,
the
yes. so
principals
we'll
of
go
each
through
student
that,
shall register.
and we'll make sure that we've got communication flow. Another common thread through several of the policies had to do with the use of federal funds and whether or not there were conflict of interest activities happening with anybody that was in charge of using the funds, bidding out, for the contracts and things like that. And the added pieces were all on federal funding. Those conflict of interest pieces were already there for other types of funds. So they must have found that it wasn't as specific for federal funding as it was for the other fund sources, and so they revised the policies to show that.
Okay, some of the questions and comments I have, policy 2110, board member elections, are removed November general from the statement. All elections are nonpartisan and to be held at the time of the November general election and even numbered years. Well, ours are during the November general, so we're gonna have to add that for this to be the first reading,
Right.
because they deleted it.
And that was gonna, and what happened is, they found in state law that it says that the elections for, boards of education, and somebody went back, who was there, Yvette, wasn't it back in 1974 or something, that there was some state law, and it says that, Board of Education elections were supposed to happen at the primary.
Yeah,
in May, or March or May, and then they switched from either March to May or May to March, I can't keep track when they switch them. But it said in state law they were supposed to happen then. This policy was out there that says that they were happening at the November general election, so they struck it out and they gave the board the choice. They said, if you're in line with state law and you're gonna run them at the primaries, then you don't have to put anything in the policy. If you're gonna run them at a different time, then you have to put whatever in that blank. And so we were just, our recommendation was to put November general election and the even number of years back in the blank, and that's what we do.
It's an awful long time from the date of filing to the, the others, not the Board of Education, but the other offices. They file and then they do run in the primary. And we have to wait until November. I don't know that it would be a bad idea not to do it in the primary.
Well, I thought that had to be by legislative change.
The recommendation we had was that,
So did you find that out, just see if we changed it, is that a board decision to change it to the, primary
I'd be
date?
surprised if that was a board decision.
I think some places do it.
Okay,
I
here's-
think Elizabeth City.
Yeah.
here's
think
the,
they do.
here's the
Yeah.
general statute right here. States that the county boards of education shall be elected on a nonpartisan basis at the time of the primary election in 1970 and biennially thereafter,
Yeah.
though a different time is established for some boards through local legislation. And so you're saying that we have to check with the commissioners to see if they put something in that says that we'll run in November?
I think so, because truthfully, there's other boards of education that run not only in the different time that you're speaking, but also run in November as a partisan race.
There were
Right,
six,
that was the
I
new-
think.
And that's
that was
something
the
they have to
thing.
do over at the commissioners, and
Yes.
they've been doing it, and in order to get that initiated or changed, you gotta go through them. So the question is, do we have to do that as well, because that's been brought up. So partisan part.
We'll check what's on the
Because,
county
see,
legislation.
Personally, me, I think, if you wanna have it nonpartisan, you have it nonpartisan, but you don't elect the person that leads the whole state education department, the state superintendent, and that's a partisan race. So I either think you have it all partisan, or you have none of it partisan, but I don't think you institute. See, what we're doing is we're saying, well, for education, that's nonpartisan. But then when they elect the state superintendent, that's a partisan race. Just saying.
Okay, one of the other, things I found, policy 3410, testing and assessment program. The statement is in there for all students, including English learner students, in their first year in a U.S. school and students following the occupational course of study pathway. The results of the EOC test, NC final exams, and CPE post assessments will count as 20% of the student's final grade in each high school course for which there's an EOC test. We've never done that before.
Right, and actually, State Board of Education says that, English language learners and the students in the occupational work study program should be exempt, from the 20%. We called the School Boards Association and asked why this was in their recommended, policy, and they just said that's the default, policy if no board acts on it. But that if the board, and our recommendation is to align with State Board of Education policy, the English language learners in their first year in the United States and the occupational work study students, they are not held to the 20% of the final grade calculation. In addition, there's a third group in there, and we'll be addressing it here, and we'll be addressing it in the main board meeting for a waiver of a policy, because in this policy, the recommendation, and I back it, when they changed the state test, because they changed or revised standards, the first year of the test is a baseline year, and results are delayed in being sent out to the school districts. And so for those tests in those subject areas, you don't have any scores to use as the 20% of the final grade. And so those students are exempt from this policy. We're doing this as a first read. The policy that's in place right now still has the students for the new test this year, which happens to be in math, in there. And so our semester students that are gonna be testing here at NAP next week, they'll be bound to the 20%. We don't waive the current policy for semester testing, and get it in line with what the new policy is going to be after you're done with your first and second reads in 2 months.
I also have a question about that policy, and we've talked about it before. What's in the current policy says, you know, the recognition for good attendance may result in exempting them from final exams. And Ms. Dowdy pointed that out, that it said may, but our high school handbook says will be exempt from final exams. So we need to clarify. And, you know, I think, and our high school students at the Currituck can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that a lot of kids do, they take advantage of that good attendance, and they go and they're trying to get exempt from some exams. What do you think?
I agree with your statement.
So I think they've worked on that. I did check online, and I've got the handbook here, and it does say will, so.
When we finalize that policy, the board can determine whether they wanna keep it as may or they wanna put it as will. And then we'll align the two things.
And in the meantime, what's going to happen with them? Because just as you spoke about, if we don't do something, NAP will not be exempt.
Well,
and-
NAP's not exempt anyway, am I correct?
Yeah, there aren't too many classes.
No, I'm
that
not
get
talking
it.
about that, I'm talking about the other thing you just said with the math. If we don't fix that, then they're gonna be taking a test next week.
Right.
And same thing with this, if we don't address this, our students are going to be doing that in January, up at the high school, the traditional high school. So I think those things need to be addressed, clarified, whatever.
We can do that in the live meeting.
Okay.
And if we have to waive another policy to line up with the handbook, if that's the board's pleasure, we can do that.
I think it's what's happened in the past.
The next question I have is on policy 3470, alternative learning programs for schools. And it says in the suggested policy, as used in this policy in context, an alternative learning program or school may serve as a site to, 1, deliver educational services required by GS 115C, to a student who is serving a long-term or 365-day suspension, which, you know, is fine if that's what, you know, we want our alternative learning school to do. But then in the note that we received explaining the policy, it says, over assignment of students to the alternative high school may occur when the code of student conduct includes transfer to the alternative school as a possible disciplinary consequence. And that's just what it said in the suggested policy. We could use it as an alternative to a long-term suspension. So why are they saying that in the note? I don't understand
Yeah,
that.
I think what they were saying, my interpretation of that is that they don't wanna look at it as a disciplinary option. What they wanna do is they wanna look at it as an educational plan for somebody who got a consequence. So in other words, the consequence for, the example you raised was a long-term suspension. And to help the student educationally with the long-term suspension, you could put them in the alternative program in lieu of the long-term suspension. They don't want it listed with after-school detention, and in-school or out-of-school suspension or long-term suspension. They don't want in that list placement in the alternative school. They want that to be considered as an educational option, not a disciplinary option. That's the way I read the counseling paper.
But it says in there, to a student who is serving a long-term or 365-day suspension, is a disciplinary consequence.
Right. The consequence is the long-term suspension, 365 days, to address his education. You give the option to that 365-day suspended student to put him in the alternative program. You don't say your punishment is the alternative program. You say your punishment is the suspension, and this is what we're gonna offer up if you wanna keep your education
To give
on
you-
track.
So then they're really not suspended, right? for 365 days. What is?
They're suspended from the regular program, yes.
Okay, but
Ah,
you're still not suspended for 365 days, is my point, right?
Not from all education, right?
Okay.
Okay, next question is on policy 4125, homeless students, and it doesn't say it here, but that's also what the Governmental program.
Yes.
It says in here, in situations in which a student attends school in this system, but his or her temporary housing is in another system, or vice versa. And a lot of people don't realize that. If they live in another system and they wanna go to school in Currituck, then they are allowed to do that. It says a superintendent or designee shall work with the other system to share the cost and or responsibility for transportation. If I'm not mistaken, didn't we have a student from Dare County coming to Currituck?
Several.
Did we,
Several.
did we ask them to share the cost for the transportation and the schooling?
I was not aware that any of those conversations took place, no.
How many do we have, do you know?
McKinney-Vento homeless students. We don't have any of our data managers here to track it. We typically have had, on average, in the teens, throughout the district.
Who is our homeless liaison?
It was Brenda, so it'll route to the, Renee now is taking it over.
Karen,
Athena
maybe.
Chastain.
And Athena too.
I'm sorry?
Athena, one of our social workers.
So we can't ask for them to pay 50% of the cost
Well,
of
we can
that?
ask for them to pay all of it according to that, but if they won't, they're obligated to pay half, right? Isn't that the way I read it?
Yeah, we need to do that.
Just as an FYI, when we've had disputes with homeless policy and procedures, we pretty much do it by the letter of the law. We have found that, and I'm not gonna name any specific county, but we have found with multiple counties that they don't necessarily follow it to the letter, and when we try to go for some help at the state level, there's really not a lot of pressure put on the other district to get in line.
Even though it says that right
Yeah,
there.
yeah, so, we'll keep pushing for whatever we can, get to help the students and the families, but, a lot of the districts, they believe that once a student leaves their county, as far as an address goes, that their responsibility to that student, it ends, and that's not what the homeless policies say.
I think a big misconception is some people think homeless is having nowhere to go.
Right.
But we can count, these students can be counted as homeless if they're just not living in what was their home. I mean, they could be living with a relative.
Right, they could,
Yeah.
like squatters' rights.
Right.
If they're just in a temporary place, they can qualify for some homeless benefits, yes.
Well, Karen may remember, I think, didn't we have to pay a taxi to bring a kid from Elizabeth City to Currituck one time?
I remember that.
Anyway, I just would like to make sure that.
We at least attempt to get,
Yeah.
Okay, next question, is on policy 4333, weapons, bomb threats, terrorist threats, and other threats to safety. My only question there, it lists or enumerates a bunch of weapons and weapon-like items that students are prohibited from possessing, handling, using, or transmitting, so on and so forth. I just want to know, are these listed anywhere in our student handbook, so the kids know all the things they're not allowed to bring to school?
So I have a,
Yeah, some are, we'd have to double check to see how complete the policy was copied and placed right in the handbook. We can check that, but we can certainly create the list.
Because
I think we should if they're gonna be a policy.
here's the list.
kind of small.
Bill can't read that.
That would help Dr. Donovan, so you know if they're using any.
You don't have your glasses on.
No, I know some, but those are for distance. I think those are really But I know some parents may give their daughter like mace or pepper spray or something, and that's one of the things that they're not
Right,
allowed to bring.
right.
so, you know, we need to let the, parents know.
Well, I mean, say Martin Luther King made
Nail
some
files,
parents
clips.
I don't see these
They don't even bring it to school.
Yeah.
right?
But you know,
I mean, maybe a
sometimes
memory
they make
board,
maybe a
but-
salad, or
Nail
they have a
file.
plastic knife, I worry.
Yeah.
Pocket knives.
So anyway, if you can, double check these, they're enumerated with the, what's in the, student handbook.
Yep.
Okay, next one, 6401, ethics and purchasing function. And this is under, number one, it says, employees are expected to make all purchasing related decisions in a neutral and objective way based on what is in the best interest of the school system and not in consideration of actual or potential personal benefit. Understand, but why can't we just end that sentence after school system? And just say employees are expected to make all purchasing related decisions in a neutral and objective way based on what is in the best interest of the school system.
I'm okay with that.
Board?
If the board's all right with that, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, good, fine.
I'm good.
Let's see. Needless to say, I probably had to take a half a bottle of no-dose while I was reading through all these.
I would say, it almost qualifies as a hobby.
Next one is, purchase of services, 6450.
Yep.
And it's under the first line there. And it's a sentence that ends, contracts for services will be made under conditions that foster competition among potential providers when feasible and after careful pricing. But right before that, it says the board generally does not require competitive bidding for purchase of services.
Yeah, but bidding doesn't necessarily have to be, checking for careful pricing, does it?
Yeah,
I would
the way
think
I
so.
looked at that, because they actually had a capital C at one point and they put it as a small c, I think they're talking about the formal, bidding process
Formal
rather than
bidding is
get,
what-
get quotes from people. I think that's what they're going after with that.
Why don't we change it to didn't quote? Why don't we make that clear?
For me, that would take a lot of time.
Why?
Well, any, service. And what's on the first map? How many service contracts do we deal, or do you deal with?
Oh, my gosh.
At least 10 for chiller contracts, 10, so I'd say probably in the 20 to 25 range. I haven't counted them. I just know they come across my desk and I process them.
But a lot of times you usually check to see what the best price is, right? Like you did.
Always. Yeah, I've been
That's what I
renegotiating
thought.
service contracts for 2.5 years now.
And that's where I was going, if we call for quotes and see what else is out there in the market, I think that fulfills that last sentence. I think what Will was saying is, why don't we put on there, get multiple quotes, as
I was
a
just saying,
clarifier.
requiring the language so we
Formal.
understand what we're
Formal
talking about.
bids.
So there's not a big discussion as to what's expected, that's all, or a question, like, somebody over here interprets it one way, I interpret it another, I was just trying to refine, not trying to make the job harder. I just know that, spending other people's money sometimes is easier than spending my own money, so, wanted to make sure that the language was reflective of, believe me, I'm not trying to be hard on you.
Oh, no,
I work in a multi, I've been on $100 million film sets where people spend ungodly money to do some really, simple stuff, and I'm not suggesting that's what you do, and I'm not suggesting that anybody would do that, but what I'm saying is, I have been witness to it, and it's
I work for
concerning.
do I need to say more? I work for the federal government before I came here. It's sickening me.
This is a
So
form
I
of
tried to
government,
do
and I didn't wanna be offensive, but
No,
this
no,
is
no,
a
you're
form
not
of
offending
government.
me. I saw things happen there that I wanted to change here, so believe me, I'm on the same page with
Yeah,
you.
I mean-
For example, I had a boiler repair this past week.
Mhm.
I went with the person I always did,
All
and I
right.
went with the person that I've dealt with on other jobs.
Yep.
$5,000, $10,000. Who do you think I chose? I know this guy does good work.
I-
So, yeah, I'm with you.
I can appreciate that.
I'm not offended.
I did a boiler repair this week myself. I rebuilt my Beckett oil burner
Yeah.
off of a boiler burner that I saw somebody yanked out of a house. I said, that looks like mine, and I tore it all apart, put a new fan motor, the transformer, the burner.
We get used
I did it
parts all
all.
the time.
So what I'm saying is, to me, the part was $350 plus the service call. At the end of the day, I did it for nothing. So I get it, believe me.
Does that mean you repair our boilers?
I'm saying, what I am saying is, I make it a life's work of calling around and getting competitive pricing.
It's
Ask
shocking.
my kids, when
It's
they want a
shocking.
soda and they're in a convenience store, I explain it to them what convenience is. I ask them, do they want one soda for $2 or they want a 12-pack for $2.50? What do you want? And, you know, my kids, they get it.
Single one's cold.
That's right.
I'll put it outside.
Yeah, but the single one is cold.
The single one is anything that rhymes with convenience, fashion, luxury, and all those other
Uh-oh, now
fancy
you
things.
did
That
that.
equates
Hit below
to
the belt.
expensive. So, just telling you.
Okay, my next question, maybe Ann can answer this on licensure, and I dealt with licensure for a number of years. It talks about the board may employ candidates entering the teaching profession from other fields who hold a residency license or an emergency license. What's a residency?
A residency license is taking over for the lateral entry licenance. You're
New
putting that
name.
together now.
New name.
Mhm.
Same thing, different.
Same thing, right.
And then my last question, on policy 7920, reduction in force, teachers and school administrators. Number 3, financial exigency. Says financial exigency means, A, any significant decline in the board's financial resources that compels a reduction in the school system's current operational budget, which we're probably coming pretty close to facing. And Karen remembers this because when we first came on the board, we were asked to RIF, reduction in force, 25 teachers. And we refused to do it. We're gonna do everything we can to save our teachers and faculty members and staff members. So,
What was that policy you speaking to?
that's 7920,
Mhm.
reduction
Number
in
3.
force, teachers and school administrators.
Mhm.
Number 3, financial exigency. That's it for my question.
I have one, I think this was, let me see. No, actually, this wasn't in the fall update, it was just one, that 6420, I guess, that we'll discuss at the meeting one. This one we talked about with contracts with the board. Discuss that at the meeting.
Any other comments, because that's the end of the policy thing.
No, I think I had, you pretty much hit on some of the ones that I had too.
Okay, before we close the work session, since we have a lot of principals here, you know, I'd just like to tell everyone that I've been chairman of the board for 8 years. And I had a couple of significant health issues last year. And I just felt that it's in my best interest that I not seek a chairmanship or an assistant chairmanship this next year. So I will be stepping down from that. It's been a great 8 years. I love the support I got from the Board of Education. And I'll still do my best to serve the school district. Probably in a lot less stressful situation. Any other questions, comments? With that, I end the work session. Thank you.